Welcome to the Go One More Step podcast. I'm Brian White. I'm a veteran, I'm a survivor of my brother's suicide, and I'm talking to people about overcoming challenges of all kinds.
There it does. All right. The one, the only, the man I first met in the wilds of Pandora, and then was absolutely flabbergasted to see at a cocktail party with none other than Jack Donaghy. And for the uninitiated, that means you had a role in 30 Rock, one of the best series of the last 20 years.
Spend a little time with 30 Rock, spend a little time doing HBO, spend a little time doing Marvel, do all sorts of stuff. But yeah, you watched me pretend to look at Tina Fey's Fanny when I did actually, and this is, nota bene, I did not actually look at Tina Fey's Fanny, but my character did.
So Hollywood magic there. You didn't even,
there you go.
Get the joy of the look.
I had glanced early, but she peeled off and I kept my eye line the same because it was all for camera anyway.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So how's life, man?
Doing good, like I think I mentioned to you earlier that I just got another offer to narrate another book about 10 minutes before this call, and that's always good.
Nice. Congrats.
Yeah. Well, you bring that same sparkle that you bring to your regular work to audiobooks. It's just you in the booth, right. And you hope that it goes well. And the rights holder, that's the person who's, in this case, the author, loves it. And so I'll crank that out for her and move on to the next one.
Be done.
Yeah, Gypsy Life.
Yeah. So is this a newish thing for you, the audiobooks?
I've been doing that off and on for a while, but one of the things that I love about where we are technology-wise and even zeitgeist-wise is that it's encouraged actually to kind of make your own way. If you're seeing people on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, a lot of them are kind of making their own way. The self-publishing industry is huge now, and it used to be not at all. In my world, you are rabidly discouraged from doing your own work and auditioning with your own work and producing your own work. Nowadays, it's practically de rigueur. It's turned 180 degrees. You look at Seth Rogen, just as an example. Fine actor, but he was never going to be a star until he started writing for himself. And now he can do what he wants. That's it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, he's a co-star, maybe a guest star, maybe. And now he's a multimillionaire because he writes his own stuff for himself.
Yeah, actually, I was talking to Jay Saunders, and he was talking about kind of the difficulty of the actor's path and how, especially for him, because he's got his heritage is Indonesian. So we're looking for an Asian male of this exact height range and this exact weight range, and you get 40 people meeting that physical profile, and then you have to do something that wows the director. But if you don't look like that, you're not even considered for a role that you might absolutely crush out of the park. So yeah, the whole self-publishing, well, I mean, case in point, I wouldn't even have known where to apply for a job as YouTube idiot and podcast host. But people are just doing it. And I think that's opening doors for people that thought there were a lot more doors closed to them. I think it's probably spurring lanes and styles of creativity that otherwise would have gone undiscovered for another number of years at least. I think it's always going to come out. When somebody's got that loud a voice inside them, and they're going to find a way out. But I think a medium like this and an environment like this, and especially, is it safe yet to say there are silver linings in the pandemic? A lot of people are finding outlets for a creativity they weren't possibly even aware of.
Right. And I believe you and I've talked about this in the past, where we're moving past the information age and into the curation age, so that good quality content starts to, the cream rises, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so, whereas Jay may be limited by certain things, he also has certain advantages that others might not. He's got a ubiquitous sort of look. And nowadays, that sort of opening of doors means that there are more opportunities. But it does fall into the same trap that you were talking about, which is to say, the casting, but even production can have a very set idea. Well, now those ideas are much softer and there's more latitude. I've been cast in projects that that were not my same gender or my same race in the past. And I've been not cast in ones that fit me perfectly based on what the casting needs. All you can do is go in with what you've got and then hope they like it. And if not, then they move on to somebody else, and it was never yours to begin with.
So that's an extraordinarily nuanced and mature point of view when you're talking about what has to be a very painful and just repetitively beat you down kind of process.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that has really struck me since starting a line of work that had me interacting with a lot of professional actors at various stages in your careers,
Mm-hmm.
you hear those of us who are not in the entertainment industry hear of the horror stories of casting and endless rejection. And every actor that has a 7-figure bank account talks about all the rejections and bearing up onto that and just keeping at it until you get the acceptance. And it's said so often that it becomes boilerplate. It becomes like the athlete saying, you got to take these guys one game at a time. It's lost its punch.
Cliche.
Because that's the core thrust of what I'm exploring. I find it really interesting to keep hearing at every stage of that path.
Right.
Of I can be a perfect fit, just like 40 other guys who look exactly like me. And Jay said, when you go in knowing that to an audition and you just take a chance, you do something with the character that you hope is, one, different, and two, what they're looking for, because you don't know.
Okay. It's an interesting point of view, because I find that the going in there, what they're looking for can be a trap. Now, I cannot talk from Jay's experience. He's a much different actor than I am. But I think the idea of going into it with what are they looking for is a trap, in as much as often they don't know anyway.
Right.
What they want is that it's you, because then they can stop looking. And so, you know, in a variety of different mediums, but certainly in my world, people will pimp a class or a way of looking at things of what they don't want you to know, meaning casting or maybe production. That's absolutely absurd. They want you to know so that you can be it, right? So that they can stop looking, so they can move on to something else, so they can say, I don't know about anybody else, but that person is right for that role. I mean, I was doing something for a 3-letter agency a while ago. This is many years ago. And it was doing, in-house thing. It was what we call an industrial. And one of them said to another one, says, well, let's just have Bolton do that too. And they said, you can't do that. He can't be 2 roles in the same show, right? It'd be too much. But when you have that level of confidence with your employer, then all of a sudden there's a freedom.
Sure.
And So don't go into it. I would say, Jay's experience is his own. I would say, don't go into it with what do they want, but rather, what am I going to bring? And either they're going to want it or not.
Yeah. And I think you're probably talking apples and apples.
Okay.
Like the way he put it was, you go in and you look at the character, or you look at what the character is, and you just try to do something memorable.
Okay.
Or you try to stand out.
Okay.
And you say that being you, and Jay just phrased it a little bit differently, but what you hope is that makes you different from the other 40, in my case, 6-foot-tall white dudes with blonde hair, or blonde-ish.
Right. Yeah.
It's be memorable and be unique. And be different from all the other cookie cutter physical presentations that they've packed in the same waiting room.
Right.
And then you go, and then you either hear you got it, or you hear you didn't, or you don't hear you didn't get it, and you just move on. So since everybody deals with that in the entertainment industry, how do you deal with it?
I approach
you presented a very Zen kind of point of view about it, where if it wasn't right, it wasn't right, and it wasn't meant to be, and you keep looking for the one that wasn't, but at the same time, you're hoping to launch a career, pay bills, feed your family.
Right. So I'll relate this story to you, and this is difference between 2 different shows. Okay, one was TV, one was a made-for-TV movie. And the TV series was The Wire.
Okay.
And I was brought in for essentially one line. You know, Pat Moran out of Baltimore was doing it. And I love Pat, love her to pieces. She also hired me for the second one, but we'll get to that. But brought me in for one line. I read the line. Physically, I was not looking like the role. The guy was a Coast Guard guy, and I had long hair and a full beard, but that's okay. You can always change that, right? So as I'm leaving her office, they stop me and bring me back. And now they give me something slightly larger. Do that right now. Didn't get that. Brought in for something else. Now it's much bigger. Didn't get that. And they bring me in for something else. It's even bigger still. Now casting has directors and producers in the room, this tiny little room with all of us in there. And there's me, the reader, Pat, and like 5 or 6 other people, all from HBO, right? Still didn't book it. I went and read for them 8 times. Never booked a thing. Now, I read for this one particular movie coming into town, also from HBO. Didn't know it at the time. Again, for Pat. Just Pat, me, and John Strawbridge at the time. So I'm making eye contact with this. And she said, that was really great. But he's from Oklahoma. And so he's not, you know, as much of a smart ass. He's more of a simple country guy, has no problem with this other individual. And so I'd like to work with you sometime, which is the end of that particular read, is an honest and sincere thing. And so I read it and she said, that was great. Thanks a lot. It's great to see you. We'll call you next time. Forgot all about it. I'm on the set of this little independent 6 weeks later. And John calls up and says, you know that thing you read about a month and a half ago? I said, sure. And he said, yeah, well, they didn't find who they want in LA or in New York, and they have to read in LA, but you'll probably start on Tuesday. I didn't start on Tuesday. I started on Wednesday, but it was the best gig I ever had in my life. I got to work with Rickman. I got to work with Mose. I got to work with Mary Stuart Masterson. And I didn't even get a call back, and it was straight into a great role, the best role I ever had. So if you think to yourself, okay, this is it, it's a universal truth. If you think this is it, you're probably wrong. You know, it's not the girl, it's not the job, it's not the gig. So what do? You do your best and you release it. Catch and release.
Okay. I like it. When does it get hard?
Always. It's always hard. It's always hard. You get used to the hard. You have to, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes the hard is better than the easy.
Why?
When you think to yourself, okay, everything's going great. I'm booking stuff. Everything's fine. You get soft, right? You start to think to yourself, oh, well, I finally cracked it, you know, smooth sailing from here. And then you get a couple setbacks. Now that really hurts because you're way up here, right? You're up here. Not 100%, but a lot of that is all fall below, right? So that's why I kind of like the Stoics, specifically how we're taking on it now, the Roman Stoics more than the Greeks, where it's like, if you're too high up here, tamper it down. And if you feel too low down here, try to bring it up. You've had bad times, you've had good times. It'll even itself out because that's not what it's about. It's about the work and it's about your connection to the work. Because if you start, you know, Simon Sinek, do you know him from YouTube and all that?
Yeah.
Okay, you might want to look into him. He's pretty interesting guy.
Guy's got glasses, public speaker, dark hair. I think I might know.
I think you do. You probably do. He's a gentle soul, but you know, there's a little bit of edge to him too, which of course only makes him more interesting.
Right.
But one of the many things that I've gotten from him is, you know, he says, and this directly applies, especially if you're doing really well in a show or what have you. It's like, you know, when they hold that door for you, or they go get you something and all those things, they're not doing it for you. They're doing it for the position that you hold.
Right.
So for instance, on the aforementioned Something the Lord Made, you know, we won Emmys, we got a Peabody, we did really well. And I had a really good role in it. People are being very obsequious and very, you know, very in tune with what my needs were all the time. And if I think to myself, I am that person and everyone must pay homage to me.
Right.
Well, first of all, there are people bigger than me on that set, but also my next gig may not have that same level. And if you start falling in love with the respect, air quotes, that you're getting, as opposed to your position in that particular thing for that particular brief window of time, it'll kill you. It'll kill your soul.
So because I'm a simple-minded man, It sounds like what you're saying is we always run the danger if things are going well of being in the first half of Rocky 3.
A little bit,
Where you're the
right?
champ, you're rich as hell, and what you're not seeing is that all the fights are handpicked to make sure you can't lose, and you're
Mhm.
slowly getting soft, and somewhere there's a clever Lang waiting to take you down.
That's it. Well, and you want to keep that sharpness. You know, what is it? The Abraham Lincoln quote that I think it's attributed to Lincoln. You probably know it better than I do. If I get 3 hours to cut down a tree, I spend an hour sharpening the axe.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to make sure your skills are tight. You know, sometimes you do that on set, but a lot of times that's the homework. You know,
Right.
you show up, you've done your homework, you know what you need. And if you haven't, proof of the pudding's in the eating.
Yeah. Yeah. So we all have our thing, and if it hasn't been made obvious, I'm a huge advocate of keeping your iron sharp, keeping the eye of the tiger. Choose your metaphor.
Right.
My realm is physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I start. If I feel things are getting out of kilter, if I feel like I'm getting too comfortable, I create discomfort, and I start at the physical.
Very smart.
Controlled discomfort,
Yes.
deliberate discomfort, and that's something I'm going to explore on my own in a future video. Is the deliberate versus incidental miscomfort, but the one prepares you for the other. What's your deliberate discomfort?
I think the deliberate discomfort comes from the physical is absolutely key. I think taking the time to stop and settle in, and also to continue to push where I would normally go. Because you talked a little bit about, you know, what they want or what you want or what have you. But sometimes you have to say, okay, there's that. But what if I was going to try it from a different angle?
Right.
Because if you get into, you know, it's like assembly line work. If you know, you have actors and they'll do that little tick, or they'll flash you one of those things, and they do it in every single movie. They're not acting
muscles.
right, whatever it takes, right? So I think that's where it is. You know, I haven't, probably you have, but I haven't gone the route of turning the water to cold for a minute and a half or whatever. But I think those little small shocks
Yeah.
keep you honest and connected.
Yeah, I think so. And
Mhm.
I run the risk of being a red pill character on social media, on YouTube, on Instagram, because
Okay.
in the year 2023 AD, if you are a dude espousing the benefits of physical fitness, especially if you're a dude with short hair who served in the military espousing the
Right.
benefits of physical fitness, you fall very clearly into a niche that very much red pills people. Like, you know, every other word is tactical and combat this and everything else, and like there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that I work and interact with that have words like that in their title and in their ethos, and I get it, because it resonates with the people we're trying to help, but it excludes a significant portion of the population, of insert your size here, your neighborhood, your community, your town, your city, your country, your earth. And so I try to be very careful about, like, my deliberate discomfort starts at the physical, but there are a whole lot of other realms.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
you know, and like my morning routine includes doing chess puzzles and doing word puzzles and number puzzles, because I try to work that as well. And I try to do stuff that is harder than my level. And it's the same thing. So I love to hear you talking about step outside of the comfort zone, because
Right.
that's something that I think, especially those in the niche that I would seem to fall most easily into, is a gaping blind spot of introduce some emotional discomfort,
Yes. 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 Yes.
introduce some social discomfort, be vulnerable with a loved one, be vulnerable with a stranger.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
And they're there for you, you know? I mean, often, well, ASK, asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be opened unto you.
Yeah.
So all those things are often there, and you can do it on a micro level, you know, just sort of a nod to somebody or talking to somebody at the checkout line. You can do what I call a shark bump and give them a little assessment. If they're like, and give you the stink eye, no blood.
Yeah.
You just move on with your life. But if they say, yeah, I know, right? Then all of a sudden there's something there. And those little micro cuts of our wall, especially post-pandemic, where the wall was a physical one, right?
Oh yeah.
One of the other things I would definitely talk about with the emotional, even almost spiritual discomfort is reframing and reconsidering the story you tell yourself about yourself, who you are, what you value, right? And even as you go through your life, not only what your relationship with your parents or whoever your big issue person was, but also maybe their parents. You know, for instance, I know that a certain loved one, a lot of the way that she responds to the world, I believe, I'm not a professional, I don't need to go that far, is directly the result of how she was brought up.
Right.
So it makes it harder to be angry at that person, but it also opens up your awareness to say, okay, if that's what happened there, as I said to my kids, it ends here. You know, I'm not giving that to you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I really love how you said the story we tell ourselves, because it matches neatly something you said the last time we spoke that I made a note of and promised I was going to come back to haunt you.
Okay.
It was because it was so good. It hit me dead in the solar plexus. Because it's something I've dealt with. It's something that I suspect a whole lot of people who might watch this are dealing with. And your quote was the retooling of a middle-aged guy.
Right.
And I said, holy cow, that's good. Because especially when we're talking, you know, and this whole thing started because I wanted to make a physical challenge for myself that seemed stupid. And I came and I did it so well, and it was so cumulatively stupid that I thought there might be some fundraising in this for a worthy charity, because it's the kind of pledge model where I'm doing enough mileage that people are going, if you finish that, yeah, I'll throw you $20.
Yeah.
And it's focused on veteran suicide. And
God love you.
I find, completely unacademically, because I'm in no way a scientist, that a big part of what veterans who are in crisis deal with, a big aspect of that, to me, appears to be a perceived loss of identity.
Okay.
And you've been around military, first responders, law enforcement, government type a lot. And so, you know, a lot of us tie a big chunk of our identity to the uniform that we wear.
Yep.
And the loss of that can be very existentially threatening and upsetting, and just completely throw you into a limbo you weren't prepared for, especially if you haven't accepted and processed through that would happen.
Right.
That said, I think there are a lot of middle-aged guys and gals who are reaching points in their lives where they're asking, who am I?
Right.
And more to the point, why am I not who I thought I was going to be?
Okay.
And that's that retooling of the middle-aged guy. And that's the story we tell ourselves bit. Because if we come to a point where we start to suspect we may have been lying to ourselves for a lot of years, that can be very damaging.
Yes.
So when you came out with that line, was that all?
Was that what?
Was that shooting from the hip, that retooling of a middle-aged guy, or was that one of those couplets that you write down on a napkin that might form the core of a song later on?
Kind of a combination of both, in as much as the napkin is my mind, as opposed to something I better write this down because I'm going to need this later.
But yeah.
Right. No, but they're two things, and they're very similar, but they're not quite the same. But the percolation, if you will, the distilling of the idea, to concentrate it and to throw out that which does not work and maybe add something, and nope, that didn't work either, but that over there, that's really good, and start to build on that. One of the things I like about the work that you're doing, Brian, here, specifically with this, and what you and I have talked about, it's not longer an information culture, it's a curation culture.
Yeah.
That's where some work like this, where we are talking honestly and openly with each other. And it's not product driven. We're not selling a medallion. We're not, at least I'm not. We're not circling around to say, well, I'm going to be having a course in thus and such amount of time. If it goes that way, it does with your work. Godspeed, more power to you. But that's not the point. And the point is to get those connections, to open up new vistas and to say, you know what, if I'm not who my parents said I was, or even who my former self as a 25, 29, 32-year-old thought I was going to be, whether career or marital status or just overall scope of life, then what am I?
Yeah.
And with that, because those expectations, either self-imposed or brought on by somebody else, are no longer hanging on my shoulders, do I now have the freedom to do all sorts of things that I never imagined before?
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna prod and I'm gonna dig.
Do.
At what point did you start retooling, and what spurred that?
Well, if you look at the overall scope, it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, I may have been heading down one particular path and then added this, and that took me one way, but then I had a move or a change in marital status or whatever, and now I'm over here. But we're all heading toward, in my case, we're heading toward the same port. I used to say to my kids when they were young, if you're on a sailboat and you want to go from here to there, you don't go from here to there. You go here and then there and then here and then there. And then eventually you get there, whatever there might be. And you may not even know where there is. Or you may be heading toward that port. And then you realize, I don't want to be in that port. That's not fulfilling for me. I want to go there instead. So now you shift, and there becomes there. And there goes over there, and it's no longer an issue. And people might be tempted to think, well, all that time was lost, but I don't think so. I think all that time you were learning how to sail. And so even if you're not headed toward that port anymore, you still learned how to sail. And so now you're better equipped to get to the place you want to be, as opposed to the place where you knew you had to be. Some people get it very clear, and it never errs in their path. Most of us have at least a fine-tuned adjustment.
Right. So where are you headed?
More of the same. I think audiobooks is going to be much more of my future moving forward. Every now and then you get a little bit of a pleasant wake-up call. Some wake-up calls are really unpleasant. Mm-hmm. But within the last few weeks, I've gotten a number of residuals checks. Residuals are the passive income of a film and TV actor.
Yep.
And I kind of look upon it as angel funds. They'd sort of drop from the heavens, and sometimes it's decent. When I was married and had Smalls, my brother married a Bermudian woman, and they were having the wedding in Bermuda, but I couldn't take my family. My work wouldn't, finances wouldn't allow it. And then all of a sudden I got a really nice fat residual check, and I could. So I took the whole family there. So it's the passive income side of our world. I'm looking to do more of that. I'm looking to being able to share my work with people who might need that because they weren't getting that training, or they're getting bullshit training. It's like, there's somebody who sells her course, but it's like, you deserve the red carpet. No, you don't, first of all. And second of all, the red carpet is not the issue, right? You don't get into my work for the red carpet. If you do, you'll do something else, and you'll do it in short order. But she's doing that because that's her gig, right?
So
she can help
let
you.
me ask, how will you know you've made it?
I don't know if I'll ever have made it. Hopefully I'll never see. For me, and it's again going back to that analogy of the sailboat. Mm-hmm. Do you want to be in that port, or do you want to be on the sea? Do you want to be moving towards that? The idea of making it as such, I think, is a scary place, because to me it suggests that the destination has been reached. It's like, what are you going to do for your retirement? Hopefully not, because when you retire from the work that I do, often, not always, you say to yourself, boy, I wish I was still doing that. Right?
Yeah. I asked that because I've asked it a few times. And mm-hmm. what I keep noticing is that the people who have definitive answers, their verb tense changes.
Mm-hmm.
I say, how will you know you have made it?
Mm-hmm.
Final past tense.
Right.
And they immediately start talking present tense about a condition, not a destination.
Right.
And coming all the way back to stealing somebody else's quote, and if I knew who it was, I would attribute it. I know it's not
Okay.
mine. The
Okay.
guy who likes to walk is going to get a lot farther than the guy who likes the destination.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
And so the people who are kind of in that right headspace define having made it as currently making it, meaning
Yes.
they're on a path that is positive and a path of growth and development, and however you call it, good energy, productivity, creativity. They're creating that they're sailing in the general direction of their true north.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And hopefully in almost a bodhisattva sort of way, they're bringing others along with them.
Right.
You know, I've done work for a company that trains people virtually. You know, you're piloting an avatar, and they're communicating with the avatar. But I'm bringing myself to that. It's not cookie cutter. I you know, now that I'm no longer in Virginia, I'm not doing the humanitarian work that you used to do with me. But I train PAs and med students and student nurses at Emory. And again, I'm bringing my own particular take on that sort of work to these individuals and getting them to open up and more soft focus and read body language and tone of voice and other non-tangibles that are not boxes one can check. But once you've opened that, you know, I've had people in corporate America talking to me virtually say, I would love it if you were my life coach. And I think, no, you would not, right? But those truths that you're communicating to them, they go with that into the real world. They take that home to their family and their wives and their children, or their husbands and their children, or to their neighbor or to their coworker. You know, I've had people say, I'm about to have a meeting and I'm going to use what I learned just now in that meeting that's going to be in 25 minutes to better be able to reach that person I couldn't reach before. How is that not successful?
Yeah.
Right.
So now, because this is interesting to me, because you're working with doctors and med students and medical people, right? And
sure,
you're portraying injured people. Yeah. So your teaching is, and this is fascinating to me because I've seen an aspect of it.
Okay, you sure you have.
You're doing something that we used to call teaching enrollment. And what you're hoping that your students, that these medical students and these medical personnel are learning, is how to talk you as the patient through this moment of crisis. Now, at the same time, I have to imagine, especially the younger in that path you find them, you're also putting them in simulated moments of crisis of their own.
Well, you are often evoking a biological response, an adrenaline dump, which is not unlike what the work that you and I used to do when it's done well. When it's done well, because you and I have talked about that too. Because if it becomes too much of the kiddie ride at the local carnival, then nobody gets anything out of it except for frustration and maybe a sense of moral superiority, both of which are useless in the field for the work that you and I used to do. My job, as such as I understood it, was to give you that adrenaline dump now so that your physiological self knows that A, you've been here before, and B, you survived. Those are two very important things based on the work that you and I used to do.
It's a version of a day in the gym, or a
there you go,
or whatever you
want. Right, but Shinken Shobu, right?
Enroll is, have you found yourself in character trying to help these people get through that? In other words, they get hit with an adrenaline dump and they're starting to hit their own shutdown point. And you, as the patient, are doctoring them to get them through that so that they get the repetitions of exercising resilience.
Well, what I find that the best work, and I did this whether I was piloting an avatar and a virtual self or actually hands-on in role in the classroom, is that I found that a lot of times the most learning comes in the debrief. What did you see there? What did you pick up there? Like, for instance, one of the characters I play is somebody who he's coming in because he has pancreatitis, but he has pancreatitis because he's an alcoholic and he's living on the streets. And so when you can talk to me about various things, but if you talk to me about my drinking, I might break eye contact and start doing something with my hands or looking away. And then did you pick up on that?
Right.
Were you aware of that? Because that's information. It's the body language, tone of voice. Did my voice get reedy as opposed to supported? And if so, that's communication. So I've had people, and if you look at the transcript, it's identical. What they said was almost word for one another. But one showed that connection and empathy and caring.
Yeah.
I had somebody watching it on videotape, on the monitor, come in from wherever they were in a different part of the facility, come in and said, she got there, and she got there because of the connection you guys had.
Right.
And he was absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's somebody I want on the other end of that stethoscope.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I do is sometimes with the PAs, we have these things called PETA, which is not that other organization, but it's physical exam teaching assistant, which is, I've been trained to do that. And in that case, you're not enrolled. But for instance, there's almost a Zorro on how to listen to the heart, and so I know where mine is for the apex of the heart. And if they're way over here, that might work for somebody, but you're going to search all day and you'll never find it here. There it is on me, right? So in that particular case, I'm Bolton. I'm not,
Right.
whoever, Michael or Robert or whatever. So I can teach you that way. And my whole goal in that is to teach you how to do it, but also to make you relax. Mm-hmm. Because if you ever played a musical instrument or a sport or whatever, when you're tense, you're not doing your best work. When you're relaxed and confident, you are.
Yeah. And the only way to do that is to train.
That's it. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Same thing with my acting work. You can tell when somebody's under rehearsed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So everybody has it. Mine is the title of the podcast.
Okay.
When it gets tough, what's your mantra? What do you tell yourself?
Breathe in, let go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Most of our and you can feel it in yourself when you get nervous or tense or whatever. Usually the shoulders tighten, the voice gets caught high, and this gets locked. It's what's fight or flight, but there's also freeze. So the fourth one, what I used to teach was there's the fight or flight, and then there's freeze. Like a small deer. If I don't move, the visual predator can't see me.
Yeah.
But the fourth one is flow. You redirect it the way you want to go. If you're being head on like this, and you take that energy, agree with them, and then redirect it in a different direction, now all of a sudden you've got buy-in, and their little mind doesn't know where to go with that, and yours says, "Okay, I can get through that." Okay, and that's again coming back to what you and I used to do. Is if you never give it to yourself. Always teach to win. You always give yourself in training the win. Right. Because if you train yourself to fail, you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like with cops in I don't know if it's still true or not, but the old thing that I heard long ago was, a cop gets shot and he drops down and he dies. The perpetrator gets shot, he runs down the alleyway, climbs over the fence, runs 100 yards down, then he drops down and dies. Right? Same wound, but one of them was already predisposed. I got shot, I'm a dead man. Yeah. The other one's like, I got shot, I got to get out of here. Yep. Two different points of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The mind-body connection is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you can release that, you give yourself all kinds of freedom. And that comes back around to releasing yourself from the preconceived notions you have about yourself. Change the story you tell yourself about yourself, because you probably inherited that.
Yeah.
You probably inherited that.
Oh yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I yesterday I prefaced a question to my wife with, I know this is crazy. I'm going to expose you to my crazy. But I want to ask the question rather than letting it boil and simmer in my head when I intellectually know the answer but need to hear it. So I'm going to share my crazy with you. And I shared a crazy, and she laughed
Good.
it off incredibly
Okay.
sensitively, if one can do that.
You can.
And she did, and moved right along. But had I not been willing to say I'm going to share my crazy, it would still be about here.
Mhm.
Not front of mind, not back of mind, but there enough to distract both.
Right. Right.
And the only way I could do that is because I've deliberately practiced being vulnerable with her.
Nota bene. Nota bene. With her. Now, if she had somebody say, "Jeez, not again. Jeez, Brian, will you stop already? You
Yeah.
whining
Oh,
bitch.
yeah.
Why did I even marry you?" Okay, we are not
Yeah.
going down the vulnerability route.
Not happening again. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Make sure that's what you want, because you
Right.
know, what does Buffett say? The most important decision you can make: who you marry, who
Yeah.
you spend your life with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
my
if you
dad,
don't, yeah, go ahead.
a long time ago
Uh-huh.
said, son,
Mhm.
there's going to come a time that you think you're in love, and it's going to be 100% physical.
Yes.
And I need you to look at that woman and then look at yourself in the mirror, because it was already at that point established that it was going to be a woman. We knew that.
Yeah.
He didn't.
You are what you're, man.
He didn't presume.
No, he knew.
But we knew. He said, I
Mhm.
want you to look at that woman, and then look at yourself in the mirror, and then you have to
Mhm.
face a very hard truth. In 20 years, neither of you is going to be nearly as hot as you are at that moment, but you're
Right.
still going to have to put up with each other's shit.
Right.
So marry the woman you could talk to.
Mhm.
I gamed the system. I married a woman who I can talk to who's also hot as hell.
What she's doing with you, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Mystery.
Complete mystery.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's picking the right person and picking the right times and all that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Didn't know it. My dad was starting to teach me about resilience, about putting yourself in the right place, about all that.
Right.
When did you start teaching your progeny, and how are you teaching?
Well,
Specific to resilience, especially.
I think part of it was setting expectations early. And
Mhm.
that was, I said to them point blank, my job is my own obsolescence. I want you to want to see me, but not need to, so that we can relax with that whole sort of thing, as opposed to you coming to me hat in hand and, "Dad, I don't know what to do." Those times may come and we will address them at that time, but that shouldn't be your default.
Right.
And I think specifically, my eldest. I
Mhm.
don't think you know the other two. But there's a quality of her that you see it every now and again, where she'll sort of grit her teeth and square her shoulders, and it's like, "No, I'm going to do this." And that's where you kind of know that you're heading down the right path. And what you
Yeah.
don't want, and you see prevalent, I think, in the current culture, is this weaponized tenderness, where folks want to show and almost celebrate their areas of, I won't say frailty, tenderness might be the right word for it, as opposed to, that's something that hurts me. How can I put a callus on that? How can I work through that so
Right.
that I can let the pressure of that, the almost crippling quality of that particular memory or response or whatever, how can I release that? And instead, they almost hold it like a baby bird, and they want to protect it, but they protect it so much that it becomes almost gelatinous. I don't know if you ever saw uh, that one Pixar uh, movie, Wall-E,
I
where
did.
he's a
I
little.
haven't.
You never did. Okay.
I'm
Well,
familiar. It's short circuit animated, right? Robot becomes soft.
yeah. Yeah, and he falls in love with a very advanced robot. So
Okay.
she's beautiful and dynamic and smart and all that, and he's kind of a lump, kind of like you and your wife.
Yeah. Okay. I should
Exactly.
watch it then.
Okay. Right, absolutely. Anyway, they're on the spaceship, and the spaceship has been traveling around, having left Earth because they polluted it or what have you, many, many hundreds of years ago. And you see the pictures of the captains, and they start off being very military looking guys, the captains of these ships. and they just get softer and rounder, and they're sitting in these sort of zero gravity chairs, and they're probably their teeth are falling out because everything is a milkshake. And they just get fatter and their bones shrink and everything because they don't have that iron sharpens iron quality.
Right.
And I think we've lost a little bit of that. We need to get it back for our own benefit, let alone for the world.
Yeah. I don't prescribe fully to the absolute red pill, tough times make tough men make good times, good times make soft men make tough times. Where are we in the cycle?
Right.
I do believe that the human animal evolved to adapt to difficulty.
Yes.
And the reason that we have supersonic jets and skyscraping buildings and bullet trains and shipping ships. Look that one up. It's actually a photo of a ship.
Is that right?
Creating container ships.
Okay.
And just this massive feat of engineering. I think the reason that we did that is because we evolved, especially with our brains, to solve problems very well.
That's how we got where we are.
The problem with that is our brains outpaced our bodies.
Definitely.
We got so good at making calorie-packed food that we outpaced our body's adaptation. We are too well-fed and too not hard enough worked as a species, especially as a Western society. I mean, most people in America are able to tell you they're poor because they see on their iPhone that they're poor. Wait, that means you can afford at least the payments on an iPhone and the plan for the cellular data and everything else. If you've traveled the planet, you've seen what poor really looks like, and it's not being upset that you can't afford this year's fashion or electronics or whatever it may be. Now, there are those in America who are that grindingly poor, and I'm not making light of that, but we're overfed, underworked largely, and it's causing problems. And we've solved so many fundamental problems that we're inventing problems to try and solve.
Yes.
Except we've already proven we're really damn good at inventing. And we're inventing at the individual and at the collective level some skyscraper problems. And we don't have the solutions yet. And it's causing mental and resultant physical health crises.
That's it.
So yeah, the exercising a little bit of resilience here and there, solving a legitimate problem under controlled circumstances for smaller stakes is really important practice, especially when you're young.
Yes.
I think this next generation is going to do some astounding things. I hope I'm around to see them. I think the technology is going to be just incredible. I also don't prescribe to the whole, all this next generation's too soft. Every generation thinks the next generation is ruining the planet.
For hundreds of years.
Yeah.
For hundreds of years.
Immemorial. What they're doing is they're approaching life from a completely different viewpoint, and we don't understand it. And therefore we fear it. That's also part of human evolution. Strangers are supposed to be dangerous. And we've gotten exceptionally and tragically good at that as well. Yeah. While we worry about the gaming, we're seeing AI. We're seeing entire industries made obsolete or digitalized.
Right.
At the same time, physical performance world records keep getting more and more mind-bending. So we're not, as a human species, growing weaker.
No.
We're improving across the board. It just doesn't seem that way because we're a bunch of old curmudgeons who don't understand the internets and all of these massive multiplayer online games and such, and the new languages and such. And that's time immemorial. In Dickens' time, somebody started playing with Dickens' language, and Dickens probably thought these kids are going to ruin literature.
Right. It's interesting, though, Brian, to me, the notion of observational participation.
Yeah.
You know, that you're talking, and it's not just seeing with your eyes, also hearing. And you were talking about it a little earlier when you talk about that everyone's talking about tactical this or what have you, using this sort of elite military speak for the most mundane and regular Joe sort of PowerPoint meeting, what have you, you know. And I think there's a corollary between that and the social media influencers sort of thing, where that's them and this is me, and they're not the same.
Right.
And with the implication almost being that if I'm not like that, I am somehow less than. And because I can never be like that, why not eat an entire bag of chips in one sitting?
Right.
You know?
And the problem with that is we know, we all intellectually know, but we are so fast to forget that when we make those comparisons with the Instagram influencers and all of that, we're comparing our behind the scenes with their highlight reel.
That's it.
The photo that The Rock puts up of him in the Iron Paradise gym at 3 a.m. is professionally lit. And it's taken by somebody else. And it's one of 600 photos that was taken during that workout.
That's it. That's it.
If you bring your iPhone down to the gym and try to recreate that, you're never going to be The Rock.
That's it.
And if we let that mess with our heads, that creates the mental health crisis, because we're comparing ourselves against an impossibility. It's digital Barbie.
That's it. That's it. Photoshop everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Professionalize everything. Discard only those things. Discard everything except for that which subscribes to the narrative. But, you know, I saw recently, and you may have seen it too, every now and then they'll see a video and it's clearly not professionally lit. It's probably security footage-ish. And what you'll see is some 14-year-old kid with arms like noodles who's at the gym and he's trying.
Yep.
And some guy who's clearly knows what he's doing and it's physical, visible, tangible results, kind of like what you're doing. But those workouts are working. And he comes up to the kid and says, do you mind if I help you out with your form?
Yeah.
And the kid's like, absolutely. Says, all right, so when you're doing that particular press, keep the elbows in. That's where you're getting the maximum amount of work from it. And he says that, okay, keep going. Give me one more. Give me one more. So not only is he helping him with his form, but he's also giving him the encouragement where the kid himself might have said, okay, I'm done for the day. But he will have felt better having gone the extra mile. And that sort of mentor-mentee relationship, even on a very informal basis, goes back thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years back to our ancestors, where somebody else brought somebody else along. And they may have been in the family or may not, maybe just a community. Yeah. But now that kid has so much more than he walked in with.
Yeah.
That's what we need to encourage.
What we all have to do as individuals is when we see somebody entering our comfort zone and it's outside of theirs, we need to welcome them to the place where growth is going to happen. And it needs to be warm and it needs to be genuine and immediate. And it needs to be initiated by us, because the person that steps out of their comfort zone and into that gym or into that book club or into that first audition or that first local theater play or whatever it is, that's the extent, that's the stretch. We now have to go and grab them and pull them past that breaking point to break them out of that world and into this. Because growth happens outside the comfort zone. But stepping outside of the comfort zone, you got a bungee cord tied to your back.
That's it. That's it. And so
you have to grab and hold them there.
Or open the door and invite them in, because all they see is that door. But if you open the door and say, come this way, if you would like, you belong in here. If you would like, that gives them that gives them the sense of ownership to say, I can either step across that threshold or not. It's on me. But I know that on the other side of that, I am welcome. So yeah, because what happens if you try to grab a mule by the harness on his head and pull? And the mule's a lot stronger than you.
Oh yeah.
But if you put the carrot, you can put him wherever you want, because he wants the carrot, and the carrot is acceptance and love and understanding on the other side.
So the time has come for you to offer your carrot.
Okay.
A young actor, a young voice actor, a young
Okay.
parent, a young about to be retooled middle-aged person.
Okay.
Open the door and welcome them in and tell them how to get through the tough times and the dark moments. What's your final piece of advice before I let you plug yourself and shamelessly self-promote?
Okay.
Give me your mic.
I would say, all right. So my mic drop is start with yourself. Mm-hmm. It all has to come through you, because unless it comes through you, it comes through anything else, trying to impress your parents, trying to get the pretty girl, trying to get the mansion or the Ferrari or whatever, it's always going to be bullshit. But if it's for you, and if they're honest for you, and it's for personal growth, it's never bullshit, even if you don't book the part.
I love it. I love it. So, other than IMDb, you accomplished bastard, Jim. What's new and fresh? If people want to bask in more of the glory that is Bolton Marsh, where do we look?
Well, we're gonna open the door on a concept. We're still on the planning stages, called the avuncular actor.
Okay.
It's going to be a little bit of a tease there. And and part of it will be, well, what's avuncular mean? Look it up. That's the most avuncular thing I could say. Right. And perhaps also the Bard with Bolton, but those have not yet been dropped. When they do, I'll let you know and let you put them.
What are those going to be?
The Bard with Bolton?
Are these going to be podcast, video series?
Probably.
What are we looking at?
Probably most likely starting with the YouTube channel.
Okay.
And maybe some Instagram/Facebook. I'm not really a TikTok kind of guy. That's not really my demographic.
Yeah, I don't do it at all.
Yeah. There's issues there. Also, they're just aiming for a different demographic than I'm really looking for. But to have that sense of being able to give to others who may have interest in it, and if they don't, it's okay too. At least you knew, right? But it's not because you didn't have the resources. And getting people out of their preconceived notions. What the lovely and talented Shannon Parks referred to as Big Dick Shakespeare. That sort of declamatory sort of thing. You can play with it. There's a whole bunch of room in there for you to play, and playing is key. You discover so much about your own life and your own work by just releasing your preconceived notions about it. And that's where the fun is. That's where the connection is.
Nice. Great stuff, man.
All right, baby boy.
80 minutes.
Wow. Right? I could talk to you for hours, brother, man.
So
right?
In the last 2.5, I'm going to do my obligatory.
Okay.
I'm asking people to be very honest and very brave, and you have done that, and I thank you.
Okay.
I thank you for willingness to try, and then for following through. I'm going to thank you in advance for looking at the edits and letting me keep at least some of this and release it. Because this to me is more valuable than watching 2 7-figure people talk to each other about 7-figure things.
Right.
The whole point of this is I want to talk to as many different people from as many different backgrounds, doing as many different things as I can, because we're all dealing with something. And I'm 5 into this thing, and I'm finding a lot of commonalities with how we're addressing it, how we're dealing with it, and how we're getting through it. And that to me is the magic of this. So thank you.
Amen.
This was a ton of fun. We're going to stop recording and then have more fun, so nobody gets to watch us actually drinking whiskey on camera. But this has been fantastic, dude. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Brian, as always. You take care of yourself.
You too, man.
Okay.